Having a Shen chapter is actually pretty interesting. I like Shen so far. I think his character is pretty cool. The only thing right now I'd wonder is what the large scale goal for him. There's completely unknown of how long Undead Unluck is going to go for. Like, it could easily be multiple hundred chapters. It could easily be 100 chapters, just from the way that the setup is established with the stuff around the Book of Revelations, God and whatnot. Like, they would have to figure out a way to take a penalty off. I think to go to a pretty far distance, just because they only have what I think one left until the final one. But either way, I was interested in this chapter. I like that it started out with a flashback of Shen. It's like, I like Andy and Izumo, but I definitely really like Shen as a side character, and I was looking forward to seeing more of what he can do. Just from the fact that, he seems pretty cool, just in general. He's got a really nice character dynamic with his assistant, and then the fact that he's got just, like, straight martial arts skills, and he's got, like, Kanyoibo and stuff, and he's got this sick extending power pole, and in this chapter, he also had like a flying nimbus. I don't remember if that was in the earlier chapters. I don't remember, but regardless, I like that. I think that's just cool. I mean, he's got like the whole martial art, like Chinese martial art set, and then they're kind of like moving some of like the Sun Wukong stuff with him, which again, always cool. So the chapter itself was pretty fast to read. Like the part that I think I spent the most time just kind of mulling over and looking at was definitely the flashback, because the flashback was the most interesting part of the chapter. Is you just get like young Shen, and he's like saying how he's going to enter a martial arts tournament, and he's going to be able to win because he beats up adults all the time, and his sister's just saying how, why are you doing that? There are going to be adults in there, so he's much smaller, and though he can beat up street punks, it's not like the same thing as beating up like trained martial artists, which is exactly how it seemed it went. Like, he got in there, and the guy that he fought, I couldn't tell if this was the finals, because they say the winner of the tournament is the unnamed school guy, so I assume this was the finals match. So if that's the case, Shen made it all the way until the end, and then this guy just completely bodied him. And you have who became his teacher, like watching, excited of this guy, saying how he has the eyes that hunger for strength. He says that they're the eyes of a dragon, and I thought that was just really cool in general, like a really nice description, because he, like they said, he isn't a fighter at this point. He can battle, but he doesn't have any technique. He doesn't have any like skill. He's just strong, which I think went perfectly with this backstory of him underestimating all these other martial artists and stuff. All these guys have been training, and just assume that his strength that he's done so far, just because he's beaten these street dudes, means that he should be fighting against these guys, where the difference, obviously, between just a bunch of guys on the streets, like, they could just be physically strong and maybe a little crafty, versus these guys who are, spent years honing their skills and discipline and whatnot, where he just got completely washed over by technique and just everything around him. And the other guy that he fought said that he's just like, oh, he's nothing more than just some brawling street kid. But the guy, the master's like, are you serious? Look at him. And that's when he talks about his eyes, and the whole eyes of a dragon, his want to become more powerful. I thought that was the coolest part of the chapter, just because it's a simplistic backstory. Like, there's nothing complicated at that point, but it's one of those tales that I think is always really cool. It has a very strong hero's journey feel to it. He's fine in the area he's in, but he overestimates his strength, and when he actually gets into the big pond, he gets unfortunately demolished by somebody who actually knows what they're doing. And then it comes back to the main story, and Andy at one point is saying he lived 140 years of his life. He just relived it. And I forget that about the book thing all the time, is they were experiencing it in real time. Like, Izumo experienced a bunch of that, just like the regular time span of events that went by. I think she said it was like 11 years. I can't remember the exact year time that she experienced, but it was definitely a long time, which is, again, wild to think about. I thought that was one of my favorite parts about that whole story, was just the level of time that went into it, which is weird because I forget that aspect all the time, just because I kept assuming that it was jumping from piece to piece, and that she was only experiencing it at the time. But no, both of them experienced it in a much longer period. But once they're just kind of getting comfy, talking about what's going on with I think this is the summer Uma, yeah, because the spring one is the armored one, and then obviously winter's the really big one, and autumn was the spider one that we saw that it turned stuff into books. But you have this dude who I assume is with the antagonist group throw like his staff. It crashes in with what looks like the Summer Uma core, assuming that's this right one. It has like the chestnut thing with the eye coming out of it, and then two of these like centipede versions to go rushing for the building, and Shen and his assistant go up there to go deal with it, and then they actually end up coming down when this dude uses his artifact to summon a bunch of martial artists. And he says that like essentially when he kills somebody with one of his minion or with his artifact, he's able to take control of them and summon them. He like turns them into beads. And Shen is like mentioning how one of the guys is, you know, he was a senior at the school he trained at, and he never ended up beating him. So there was like, oh, well, is he upset that he never got his chance to beat him? But it seems more like he's excited that because this guy beat somebody he couldn't, that means that this guy should be powerful, and he's going to want to go up against him. He's even saying like it's survival of the fittest. He doesn't really care that that guy died, which I don't know. I feel like he's going to care somewhat, just because like even if they weren't close, they did have like obviously like some form of rivalry between them, of, you know, him and his old team, would be schoolmate, you know, fellow disciple. They don't have to be buddies, but I imagine it would be unfortunate just to hear that the guy died, unless he hated him, but I don't think he would. Shen doesn't seem like that kind of dude. Like if that guy was still alive and Shen talked about him, I assumed it would come down to more of like, oh man, I gotta beat that guy at some point, and he probably could now, I would assume, with like all his new training and skills and superhuman stats and stuff. But maybe it's like one of those things where even if he decided to go fight him, he'd be like, well, I'm too powerful now, it'd be too easy. But this guy, no matter what, also has artifacts. I assume is you know, has a negator power, and he is going to be fighting Shen for the next couple chapters. And Andy and Izmo, they can deal with the Uma stuff like off on the side. I want this to be the focus, because like the Uma stuff is cool, and I like the whole concept of them, but I would much rather see what's going on between Shen and this rival, because again, we haven't had a lot of Shen focus, but he's been around for a good amount of the series. Like he shows up, but we haven't had any good focus like this, and that's what I'm really looking forward to over the next couple chapters. Because once we get over the, like what's going on with the seasonal Umas, I'm wondering where the plot's gonna kind of direct, and like how long they're gonna be competing against Under. I mean, Under could easily be like the long-running villain for most of the series until they get to God, but who knows? But right now, I just want to see a martial arts fight between these two dudes. I just want to see some sick, growing stab combat. I think that'll be really cool just to see the hand-to-hand movement between these two dudes. Because we did find out, like, Shen's whole motivation is, like, he says being the strongest in creation. So I would assume he's just going to keep trying to fight all these, you know, all these other strong enemies that show up. I wonder what exactly he's going to, like, angle that towards. Does that mean eventually he's going to want a 1v1 Victor or Andy at some point? Has he tried to fight Juiz? Where does he exactly, like, sit right now in his goal? Does he know how many people are above him? Or does he have a game plan? I mean, that could also be one of the things. Is like Juiz is just far above him. Maybe that he's just trying to figure out a plan for that. Same thing with, like, Victor or Andy. Who knows? Either way, definitely looking forward to seeing the next chapter with Shen. I mean, if the next chapter is focused on other characters, like, on top of that, like, I'm okay with that. But I will say that my big want right now is to see stuff with Shen. I think that'll be a lot cooler than like Andy and Izuma just going after another Uma. I'd rather have them going after the Uma as like a background part of the what's going on in the story. Like we just kind of peer over to them every you know, a couple pages per chapter. But the focus I would like to see on Shen's backstory. But anyway, other than that, no comment below. Thumbs up to the video, the like button, subscribe button, and check out my other videos. Better than that, appreciate everyone who's already subscribed. Thank you all for listening. Bye.